So the Redevelopment Agency of Salt Lake City engaged a Salt Lake City-based team of designers, landscape architects, branding experts, architects and engineers to develop plans for the complete transformation of Regent Street on Block 70 in downtown Salt Lake City. I am Jesse Allen with GSBS Architects, and you will also hear from Brent Watts with Struck and Mark Morris with VODA Landscape and Planning.
The initiative that we had was to create a venue for gathering, as the mayor mentioned, a place to discover and a place to really connect the downtown public. It'll be unique. As the mayor mentioned, the history of this block is certainly one that we will love to tell the story. It'll be unexpected, the types of experiences will be on the street, and of course, with the Performing Arts Building, the opportunity to be storytelling and a theatrical element to this, the block will be one that we will highlight. So in the process of developing this, we wanted to create a street of stories. That's the campaign, the concept behind the brand of the street. And so the next slide will show you, as mentioned, the history of Regent Street is really one. First, we know of Brigham Young and his brothers were property owners on Regent Street. Salt Lake House was the hotel which housed the Pony Express when they came to the city. Some of the notable dignitaries and colorful people, Mark Twain came and visited in 1861 at the Salt Lake House, and of course, news. In the 1800s, the Tribune was there for 80 years, and then, of course, the Desert News that was on the street from 1997. So Regent Street has a lot of great stories, and because of the history of the authenticity of Regent, we feel that's a great way in which we'll design and develop elements that will make this a unique experience. The next slide, in the process of developing the branding for this experience, working with our design team, we created 5 guideposts. And these guideposts will essentially embed the opportunity to make it a gathering place. It'll be one where there'll be, as mentioned, unique art and design, not unlike anywhere else in the country. We really would like to have unique pieces of art that make it iconic to the street. And of course, Regent was a place of great businesses that were here in downtown, and so the element of commerce will be an important part of the experience of our objectives. And then, as mentioned, the other guidepost is headline news, one that will use this element of storytelling because our strategy is a street of stories. That headline news is kind of will be woven into the design elements using typography and stories that will define the experience on the street. Of course, the last two is because the Performing Arts Building will be housed on the block, that we love the idea of street theater, where relevant stories, my story today, we'll walk to the street and they'll be using digital and other technology to make it an experience on Regent. And of last, because, as mentioned, the history of Regent, the importance of this multiculturalism, the diversity of the street. You had Plum Alley, which was housed hundreds of immigrants who came and had their businesses on Plum Alley. The theater that was on Plum Alley, and we love to weave in the element of multiculturalism into our designs. So those were the guideposts. From that, you'll see the next series of slides talk about conceptually, will be, the vision here is that it's a gathering place. It's a place where you'll want to be seen and to see, and using the lighting and using the elements of retail within the street. These concept sketches are referencing looking towards City Creek, as the mayor mentioned, the vibrancy of it being a mid-block crossing, and then using some of the large buildings as a place where we can put placemaking, designs and graphics, sculptures on the building faces to create another layer of storytelling on Regent. And of course, one of the great areas of Regent Street is the Plaza area, which is just south to the Performing Arts Building. We see this as a great opportunity to create a gathering area. We would like to commission an artist that would essentially sculpt a piece of art that would be in that center area of the plaza. This is just a concept sketch. But for you, it's something dynamic, large, and exciting that people want to come and essentially take their pictures in front of it, and an opportunity to let that become a place of gathering. Some of the other sketches are referencing embedding and looking at retail, an opportunity for the public to engage in retail on the different sides of the street. So when we started the assignment, the idea as a design team was, so where have we been, and where are we going to go? The story of then and now is an important part of this experience. And so we went and looked at the history of Main Street and what happened on Main Street and the businesses that were here. And you can see in the rich history of all of the signage and the retail that happened over the history of the street. And the types of businesses were there. And so we took that idea, and the next slide shows, so we created a logo, a word mark that will be used in all of our branding. And the definition here is it will be, you can see in the design of Regent, on Regent, is we've taken the element of printing press, the bending of the paper, and made it contemporary. So with the new design of the logo for Regent is designed with this very simplified treatment of type that will be used on our wayfinding signage that leads you into the mid-block crossings. And of course, lastly, the most important part about the engagement is that what retail will be. And we've analyzed some of the previous data, and we're identifying specific retailers that would be housed. We've had a lot of great and exciting conversations with business owners and potential business owners, an opportunity for them to want to come and engage with, to have their store on Regent. We see Regent as a unique opportunity for local artists, local entrepreneurs, and a place where they would want to have their retail store on Regent because of its authenticity and the beauty and the excitement of what would be happening on the street. Okay, I think that's great.
Swap?
Yeah.
Great.
All right, my name is Mark Morris with VODA Landscape and Planning. I'm a landscape architect and urban designer that's been working on the design team. I'll run you through kind of the details of this street, and working with this design team has been really collaborative and trying to come up with some specific goals with creating a unique place in Salt Lake, that it will be a destination on its own, whether or not you're coming down for a performance or you're just here on your lunch break, making Regent Street a real destination on its own. And with the kind of details of Streetscape, the goal overarching all of this was it needed to be very multifunctional. We need to be able to bring very large 18-wheeler trucks down this street to access the theater, but we also want to make it very oriented to pedestrians. So how do we make this function in a lot of different ways? So we've got a few details here, some cross sections. The top on the right is Regent Street itself, that we're basically designing what is called a shared street, that it wouldn't have a traditional curb and gutter, but it would be a street that would have all of the space basically available for pedestrians, that were the street to be closed off during an event or when there are large amounts of people, that the street itself becomes a public space that's easily used. For restaurants, if there are restaurants along the street, they can spill out into this space and really make it an interesting, vibrant street. So some of the details, again, going back to this idea of headline news, with the Regent block being the home of story and news for so long, we really like this concept of embedding all of these ideas into the actual infrastructure of the street. So as you'll see this on the top corner, we've got an old Salt Lake Tribune, and I really liked the difference in texture and pattern that these different fonts and scale of print made on a page, and sort of took that and made it contemporary to design this very pixelated contemporary hardscape element that would, again, be a smooth surface that would make it very easy for this street to function in a lot of different ways. And of course, some of the elements bringing in some color and some green on the street. Throughout the UPAC process of gathering comments on this project, again and again, it was that Regent Street was a pretty harsh place as it stands today, and bringing in some elements of greenery and shade and some things that will make it a little bit more inviting. And the furnishings, looking through the details of it, really embedding in all of the details of the street, these concepts that Brent has mentioned. Multiculturalism, headline news, having those in all of these elements, that they really begin to tell the story of Regent Street. Lighting, over and over again, the public comments were that they wanted the street to be a well-lit, safe-feeling place, and using those lighting elements to really create an interesting place to be, whether or not you're there at a big event, a concert, or there for a performance at the theater, or you're just there to have dinner, that it's an interesting place to be. The signage, working through some of the details of how the signage and wayfinding itself works, having again that sheet detail of the fold of the paper kind of embedded in all of these elements. So through all of this, we were looking for a way in which we could integrate the telling of stories in a way that was engaging, and again, coming back to that sense of discovery. We didn't want this to be a Regent Street museum, and we didn't want to just have a bunch of plaques up and down the street saying, here's what Regent Street used to be. We wanted it very much to be something that people could feel that every time they came to Regent Street, they were discovering something new, and perhaps learning a new story about Regent Street as they're creating their own news story on the street. So going back to the idea that the printing presses for the Tribune and the Deseret News were on this street for so many decades, we came back to this idea of a press sheet running through a printing press, and came up with this idea of having a kind of an artistic interpretation of that press sheet running down the street, that every time it folded, it could become a new story. We could again bring in those patterns of multiculturalism and the different cultures that were found on the street, and embedding really in this infrastructure some interesting stories. We found a great story of an older gentleman that was talking about in his childhood going down to Plum Alley and having the Chinese New Year. The old men there would hand out these red envelopes filled with money at the New Year, and that was his memory of what Plum Alley used to be. So really trying to kind of find these interesting stories of this place and the history of Salt Lake, and telling it to the people as they kind of venture down this street and learn new things about it. One of the interesting elements about this press sheet element is that it can become many things. Having it go up on surfaces of buildings, it can become elements that are built into murals, pieces of art, interactive, engaging elements that, again, we want people to feel that every time they come to Regent Street, they're discovering something new about the history of Salt Lake, that we really have a multi-layered and very interesting history. This block in particular we found was a cross-section of a lot of interesting elements in the history of Salt Lake. So we'll run through these pretty quickly, just some site plans of the street, kind of functionally how the street would work. Again, designing the street in such a way that auto traffic can still get through when it needs to the parking garages that are on the street, the truck traffic to the theater, but designing it in such a way that it would be very low speed and that people would feel very comfortable walking through this space. We're fortunate that across the street at City Creek Center, we have Regent Street that functions in a very similar way. That shared street concept is functioning really well there, and trying to bring that across the street to Regent was one of our main goals. And there at the bottom, a little bit of a perspective view looking south, the Eccles Theater on the right, and the Regent Garage there on the left. Kind of mid-block heading south towards 200 South, you'll see the large plaza behind the theater that is, again, a multifunctional plaza that at times it will be a loading yard for the theater itself. And when those trucks aren't there, designing it in such a way that restaurants surrounding that plaza can spill out onto this space. And there towards the south end, getting closer to 200 South, again, bringing in these elements that will make the street a place that's inviting and interesting. Orpheum Avenue is a little bit of a challenge. Orpheum connects Regent to State Street and will continue to function as a major auto access to the project. And the team is looking at ways in which we can use Orpheum as kind of an intro to Regent Street. If someone is coming in from State Street, what sort of welcome do they get? What sort of impression do we give as they're entering? And then lastly, it's been mentioned that mid-block connection between Main Street and Regent Street is a major part of improving the walkability of downtown. Having an added connector will, again, make a lot of this energy between Main Street and Regent Street really work together to create a great space. The mid-block connection itself is very narrow. It's only 24 feet wide, but we saw this as a really great opportunity to incorporate art. There are a lot of salvaged elements from the print building and the others that were demolished to make way for the theater that we feel this would really be a great spot for those pieces to be showcased and really tell that story of the history of this place. So the last two images, we've got some nighttime renderings of, again, hopes and dreams of what Regent Street can become. This is looking south from City Creek Center behind you, looking through the block towards Gallivan Center. And again, it's winding these elements all together, creating a destination that people can come to on their lunch break, at night, really making it a destination at any hour of the day. And then the last image looking north from the plaza up Regent Street, the Regent parking garage there on the right, and the Eccles Theater there on the left, creating a vibrant place that people really feel tells a different and a unique story of Salt Lake. Because this street is very different from so many Salt Lake streets, we really see this as a great opportunity to create something special.